Hello my YouTube beauties, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be walking you through my favorite brushes. They live in this little guy. This is what I use every single day and I basically don't stray from these brushes. If you like these types of videos, be sure to give this one a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe because I do upload every Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. I'm going to pick out, I have some brushes in here that I don't use every day. I just kind of threw them in to throw them in there. First, I'm going to start with face brushes. I'm not going to go in any order of like how I apply them to my skin. I'm just going to be kind of like sharing as I go through them. So this is the Mr. Right brush from Too Faced. You can see I use this so much that the Mr. Right piece has like come off of the brush, but this is the perfect powder brush. As you can see, it is like a domed, it has this top right here where it is a little bit more pointed at the top and then it feathers down towards like the big piece at the bottom. So this is dirty. I am gonna like go through and clean, so I apologize for that, but I use this to powder my face. This is the only powder brush I've used for years. I find that when I dip this into the container of powder, it picks up on every single bristle because it is this domed shape that when I go to apply it to my skin, all of the brush is covered. It's not like I'm getting this huge piece of powder just in one area. So I really like the brush for this. It's just big enough to powder my skin. It's not too big where it's kind of like overpowering. For my face, it's the perfect size and I just am really happy with this brush. It washes really well and it's held up for years, so I would definitely recommend this one. It is a little bit like big and bulky, but that's fine. Next brush I'm going to share is from Morphe. This is the M527 brush. Now I only have a handful of brushes from Morphe. I can't say that they're like the best brushes in the world. I can say that they are pretty affordable, which is great. This is the brush I use to contour and bronze my skin. This is the one you always see me using to chisel out my cheeks and apply a bronzer. So this one is kind of similar to the Too Faced brush in that it is kind of domed. I guess most of my brushes are domed. It has this like feathering out and then it has this top piece right here that applies the contour exactly like where I want it. So what I really like about this brush is that when I dip it into the bronzer, I'm a little bit more light-handed than I am with the Too Faced brush. And so it only mainly picks up the bronzer just on this top longest hairs of the brush so that when I go in to actually apply bronzer, it only applies it just from this top layer and then I can go in and buff it out. So I find that it doesn't apply too much bronzer. It is a little bit wider of a bronzer brush, so it does a good job at like feathering and blending out the bronzer without bringing it too far down or too far up on your face. So I really like this brush. I do like the Benefit. Don't remember what brush it is. I will have a picture of it, but it's like domed as well and that's more of a chisel contour. This I find does both contour and bronzer. Next brush is the only brush I use when I use liquid foundation. I generally am a beauty blender type of person. That's one that I will throw in here. Typically, if I use a sponge, it's always a beauty blender. But if I don't use a beauty blender, I use this brush only. This is the It Cosmetics Love as the foundation brush. This comes into stock for like limited amounts of time every once in a while. So I feel comfortable recommending this to you guys because I know it's gonna come back and I think it's actually in stock currently. But this brush is shaped like a little heart. Brush is like cinched in right in the middle of the brush where it looks like a heart shape and it does come down to a point right here. I find that that makes the bristles of this brush so dense and I don't get any of those streak marks that I do with the Sigma. It's like the flat kabuki brush. I feel like those bristles are too long and too flimsy and there's too much space between them to apply your foundation in a seamless way. The bristles are packed so well in here that there's just so many little baby hairs. There's no wiggle room in here. It applies your foundation so seamlessly, doesn't leave streak marks. I can get pretty full coverage with applying it with this brush. And it's the only brush that I use that doesn't make my skin look dry. Now I have oily skin, so for a brush to make my foundation look dry is like crazy. But yeah, I really, really like the handle of this brush. I think it's just a super, super pretty brush. It is definitely more expensive considering this is the only brush that I use for my foundation. If I ever do use it, I feel like it's worth investing in. It washes really, really well. Like out of all the brushes that I have, I think this is probably the one that's the best made. I really, really love this It Cosmetics brush. This is for blush. And again, here it is. It's tapered. So it has the point at the top like the rest of my brushes, but it's a little bit smaller. So as you can see, it's got longer bristles than the Too Faced one. Maybe they're the same. I don't know. It's just not nearly as poofy as the Too Faced one. So it's very similar. I apply my blush by just adding the tip of this into the pan of blush. That way I can apply it kind of in the center of my cheek right here and then go in and use the end bristles to blend that out. I find that it like adds just the right amount of product right where I want it, and then I can blend it out, if that makes any sense. And this is a BH Cosmetics V2 brush. Here is a Sigma tapered Kabuki F86 brush. This is what I use if I do use the It Cosmetics brush to apply my foundation and then I don't want to use a beauty blender to blend out my concealer. Typically I always use the beauty blender to blend out my concealer, but like I said, if I'm using the cosmetics one, if there's like a foundation that looks weird with the beauty blender or I want more coverage, then I'll use both of these. And this is what I use to blend out my concealer. I think it's what everyone used like forever ago. It was very, very, very popular. And I think the one who got it started was like Jaclyn Hill or something, but it's huge. Look at that. This is a giant brush to blend out your concealer. One of the reasons why I like the beauty blender over this is because I feel like the beauty blender shears it out enough to where it's not going to look heavy or cakey. It's harder not to do that with a brush. So I do really like this. I find that it's the best one that I have ever used to blend out my concealer, but this is still second to a beauty blender. I really like the size of this. I feel like it takes no time at all to blend out my concealer. Here is a Morphe brush. This is the M438 brush. This is what I use to dip into powder to set down my concealer. So as you can see, it is a lot smaller than the brush that I would have blended my concealer out with. I really, really like this because again, it's domed. Do we see a pattern here, people? It has this, the longest bristles are in the middle. I kind of use it very similar to the Mr. Right brush from Too Faced, whereas instead of the blush and the bronzer, I dip the brush in kind of like this into the pan of powder instead of like this. So I get it like more coated down the side and then it applies a little bit more evenly. So I really like how long the bristles are of this brush right in the center because it gets right into my inner corner and then it sits so nicely underneath my lower lashes. And yeah, this is just like the best brush that I've found to set your concealer with. One more face brush. This is the Sephora Pro Highlight Illuminator 98 brush. This is what I use to highlight my face. Again, it's got a little bit of that tapered brush type of thing going on, but it's not nearly as pronounced as something like this. So it does have a little bit of that domed, but as you can see, the brush is pinched right here. So it feathers out on the side, but then when you turn it this way, it's a little bit more narrow. So I use this where I like dip it in and then I just bring it up on my cheekbones. I find that it's the best, like the best size to hit the high points of the cheeks. It also is really nice. I use the skinny side to put a little bit of highlight on my nose and then I turn it to like the wider side to bring some highlight onto my Cupid's bow. I really like this brush. It seems very similar to the one that everyone loves with Anastasia, but yeah, that's the brush that I use to highlight my face. You guys notice that I only have like one brush per step in my makeup routine. I don't have a set like of 4 or 5 brushes that I alternate through because I just have loved and relied on these ones so much that I only have one brush per makeup step. So next we're moving on to eye brushes. Here's all of them. I got this set from AOA a long time ago, and they came in a set of, I think, 10 brushes, and I picked 4 because these are the ones I use so often. These brushes are incredibly good quality. You would not think that from it being from AOA Studio. That's usually like a much cheaper brush brand or just cheaper makeup brand in general, but these are so good. The first brush I want to share is a pencil brush. It's the only pencil brush that I use. This is the AOA Studio E132. So this is what I use to smudge out my lower lash line with. It's the perfect size. It's so teeny tiny. I just find that it does a really good job at blending out my eyeshadow underneath my lower lash line. The next brush from this set is the AOA Studio E126 brush. This is a very big fluffy brush that you can use to blend out your crease. This is one that I would go in with my very first crease shade, something that I'm okay not being as precise with because it is more of a fluffy brush. The next brush, this is the one that I would probably use the second crease shade with, something that's a little darker and I want a little bit more concentrated and not so feathered out. This is the AOA Studio E127. This is a lot more domed than this one is. Can you guys see? This one is probably my all-time favorite crease brush because I find that it has that tapered, the longer bristles are in the middle, but it just does such a great job at blending out my crease shade. This is probably my favorite crease brush if I had to pick one. The bristles are just like this, the right length. It blends really easy. It's so soft. It does not flake, or it's not like I'm finding bristles that are coming out of it. It's really, really well made. And this is just like my favorite crease brush. This last brush from the AOA Studio set is the E128. So this is a little bit more precise and smaller of a brush. So I use this in the outer V because it's like the perfect size for it. If you have not tried the AOA Studio brushes, I think you're totally missing out. They are so good. This is what I use to set down my eyeshadow base. This is the Sigma Soft Focus something. I don't know. I've had it for so long. It's kind of rubbed off, but it's the E52 brush. This is a very flat shader brush. Like I said, it's what I use to set down my eyeshadow base. I don't really use it for anything else. It's a good size and it like gets your whole eye pretty fast. Here are 4 more crease brushes that I love. The first one is from Zoeva. This is the 224 Luxe Defined Crease. This is a very unique brush because it's unlike the other ones that I have where it is tapered at the front. It is very flat. Like it does not have a taper to it. This is a brush that I use when I want something that's a little bit more blown out. However, I also want it placed in a certain area. Because it's a smaller brush, I can fit the shade that I'm using in a smaller, more defined area, but because of the shape of the brush, it just by nature, it allows the eyeshadow to be a little bit more blown out. This I would say used to be my favorite. This used to be like the only crease brush that I used, and since then I have moved on to brushes that I find that are better, but this is the Sigma Tapered Blending Brush E40. This used to be like in everyone's like holy grail brushes. This, I find the bristles are a little too long to get a nice blend, if that makes any sense. I still use it, but I would say I use it a lot less often than I used to. 2 more crease brushes. This is the, this is like one that I got, I think from a BoxyCharm. This is the Moda Pro BMX 430 crease brush. Now I think that this came with like one other brush set, but it has these cool little divots on the side of the brush that like make it easier to hold on to. It's not plastic or shiny, so it just makes it like a little easier to like get a grip on this brush. This is very similar to this brush. This AOA Studio crease brush is a little bit more narrow. This is a little shorter. It's still tapered, but it's just a little shorter version. This is one of my other like favorite crease brushes. It's super soft, doesn't flake or fade. When I wash it, it comes out exactly how I would like it to. It's not like I'm losing a bunch of bristles. It's really well made, and it's just the perfect size for my crease. Last crease brush that I super love. This is a Sonia Kashuk brush. I am kind of bummed that they don't have the style of brushes on the side of it, but it did come in a set, and I'm sure, I think Sonia Kashuk comes out with sets every once in a while where they have brushes very similar to this. It's like a crease brush, okay? This is very similar to this brush. So if you cannot find the Sonia Kashuk brush, you can definitely purchase this one, and it's like roughly the same. The only thing I would say is the Sonia Kashuk one is just this much longer, but like not by much. Really, they're very similar in shape. Last two brushes. This brush is the MAC 217 brush. This is what I always use in my outer V because it is that domed kind of like pinched brush shape. I find that it does a really good job at placing the pigment and then blending it out. It has really, really soft hair bristles, kind of like the AOA Studio ones. To me, the AOA Studio one is actually softer than the MAC one. This is my go-to outer V brush. It just does a really good job of blending out the shades. Then the very last brush I'm going to talk about is the Sigma Flat Definer E15 brush. This is what I use if I want to apply a eyeshadow like really, really closely to underneath my lower lash line. This is so tiny, like it's so thin. It just does a really good job at getting the eyeshadow right up close to my waterline. And then I go in, I take the AOA Studio pencil brush and just kind of like smudge it out. Those are all of my favorite brushes that I use every single time you see me do on my makeup. If any of these ever break, I'm definitely gonna have to repurchase it because to me, there's not other brushes that can replace them. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please give it a thumbs up if you did. If you guys have any favorite brushes that I didn't cover or like maybe brushes that you would recommend to me, let me know. I hope you had a wonderful day. I love you guys so much. I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.